Over the last 14 years, I've been planning and creating a garden that offers beauty in all 4 seasons. And winter is the perfect time to reflect on our garden spaces and start dreaming about what we want to work on once spring arrives. In this 4-part series, I'm sharing garden tours from each season in my garden, capturing how it evolves throughout the year. My hope is that these tours inspire you and help you take note of plants you might want to add and give you ideas to carry into your own garden as the new season approaches. Today, we're looking at summer, when the garden fills in with lush layers, color, and texture. Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to my garden. We're going to start here in my patio bed, and this one is really looking so beautiful right now. I have really packed the color in this bed over the years. I have a shrub that's actually quite colorful. It is the Proven Winners Firelight Tidbit. Now, if you've been around for a while, you might recall that I planted these back in 2022. So this is season 3. And so the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, and the third year they leap is sure true for this shrub here. This is their 3rd year and they're looking absolutely stunning. Now, the size on these is supposed to be 2 to 3 feet tall and wide. And I would say at year 3, they are full grown and at that point. So they will likely continue to grow because they seem to be happy in this bed. And so I might have to prune them back quite a bit each year to size control them. But I love the way this drift has filled in. So when they first start blooming, they have a bit of a green color. Then they start going this beautiful cream before aging to shades of pink. So if you are looking for a more compact version of a panicle hydrangea, which can take more sun, this is actually a full sun area and these perform beautifully. Take a look at the Firelight Tidbit. I can link the video below where I added these to this bed. But what I did this year is something different. I added annuals to fill in the gaps between perennial blooms, and I'm absolutely loving it. This is not something I've done before, but I think I will be repeating this every year going forward. Starting with these really beautiful dahlias here. These are the Mystic Illusion Dahlias by Proven Winners. And what I love about them is that they have this really striking dark foliage. So it provides such a nice contrast between all of this green that I have in this bed. And while I'm not usually a fan of yellow flowers, I have come to really like them in the past season or two, especially this really light, soft yellow. So this one this year is surprising me how much I love it. And you can see it's filling in this gap here beautifully. And then I did a step down thing where right below it, I added a drift of the Wedgwood Pink Angelonia. And Angelonia is a new to me annual. This is the first year that I've ever grown it, but I've always heard great things about it. It's supposed to be the summer snapdragon, where traditionally snapdragons are spring plants. This one goes non-stop all summer long. Now this one is also a Proven Winners plant, as is the one below it, which is the Whiteout Superbena verbena. Now, I did notice recently that I think the bunny rabbits in the garden were starting to kind of go at it, because you can see there were some rigid cuts. And down low like this, I don't think it was deer. I'm pretty sure it was the rabbits. So I have sprayed some invisible fence or liquid fence deer and rabbit in hopes that they'll leave them alone and they will start to fill out again, because they looked beautiful just a couple of weeks ago with a ton of white blooms. And then I continued that drift of annuals here with the Surefire Begonia White. And you can see they have filled out quite a bit since our June garden tour and looking really pretty. But the perennial that always shows up for July is the coneflower. And I have quite a few varieties in this bed looking really beautiful. And this here is the double scoop raspberry. And this clump started from one small 1-gallon pot, and it is now huge. It actually got so large and tall that I had to provide a stake to keep it up because it was starting to flop forward. So that means it is probably time to divide it. And I'll be taking care of that this fall and spreading it around the garden because I really love it. And then right behind it you can see that I have a bunch of Echinacea purpurea, or the traditional native coneflower. It is beautiful, and I have quite a few because it self-seeds readily. In fact, I posted a video a couple of weeks ago about perennials in my garden that self-seed. And the wonderful thing about that is that as they drop seed and create new plants for you, they will fill out your garden beds with no extra effort on your part. And between the coneflowers, I have added a drift of this Signorita Rosalita Cleome by Proven Winners, which is also an annual. And I really love the way it kind of just weaves this soft purple pink color through the center of this bed. Now, another really pretty coneflower that I have here is this beauty. This was also started from seed a few seasons ago, and this is the green twister echinacea. When it first emerges, you can see that it has a bit more of a green color on the tips with pink in the center, and then as it ages, it starts to go mostly pink. But it is a really pretty and interesting echinacea. And Nyphophia, or red hot poker. Now you can see that this is not red at all, and traditionally you will see these in hot colors like oranges and bright yellows and even some red. But this one here is actually called Lady Luck, and it's more of a chartreuse lime that kind of has this gradient or ombre effect to a cream color at the bottom. And believe it or not, I purchased this plant on Etsy several years ago, and I absolutely love it. I have yet to see this color at a garden center or nursery, and I think it's really beautiful and interesting. Now this here is a super tall Joe Pye weed. Now this is a wonderful end of season or late season bloomer, probably in August, so towards the tail end of summer. It is a really striking plant, and because I have it planted in the center of the bed, I think it looks really nice. And right here in one of my front borders, I have some lilies that are getting ready to bloom. So lots of lilies at this point. And this one here is the Casablanca. And you can see that this grouping is full of buds, but I actually have some in bloom right behind me. While I was editing my garden tour, I noticed that my Casablanca lilies had opened up some more, and they're looking really pretty. They are also so fragrant and smells really lovely over here. And so I thought that I would take a little bit of footage to share with you what they look like as they continue to bloom. Okay, back to the tour. But this lily here is actually a different variety, and I'm not sure which it is. I planted it several years ago as a bulb, and this year it decided to show up and get pretty tall. It is a double lily. It's what they call the rose lilies. You can see it doesn't have an exposed pollen stamen in the middle, and so I think that one is beautiful, and I wish that I could recall the name. I'm sure I have it somewhere in my records. But here is the Casablanca, looking gorgeous. This is such a fragrant lily. It is a beautiful shade of bright white. You have to be careful when you brush up against it because you will get pollen on your clothing or on your hands, but it is so striking and gorgeous. Now it is pretty upright and sturdy this year. For the past couple of years, it's been a little bit hard to keep upright, and I've had to stake it, but this year it's looking great, and I haven't staked at all, which is wonderful. And you can see right in front, I have a drift of an annual that I started from seed. This is about the third or fourth year that I've been growing it, and I love it. It is the Blue Horizon Ageratum. It's got this really gorgeous, kind of vibrant violet purple color. Almost has a hint of blue to it. It is beautiful. And right behind, I have a hedge of Bobo hydrangeas. Now, for some reason, the one on the end is really bloomed out at the moment, and the other ones are just coming into bloom now. I have a total of 5 in this area, and I have thought about moving them because, if I'm being honest, I think they get a little too much sun in this area, because after they're done blooming, they do tend to go a little bit brown and a little bit unsightly, and I don't prefer that. So I am thinking about a spot where I can move these either this fall or before they break dormancy next spring. But my Olivia Rose Austin rose is putting on its second flush of blooms and looking really pretty. So I actually went through and cut this back after it had its first June flush. And you can see how many petals. Actually, that one was at the end of its bloom, but so many petals on this beautiful rose, and it is so fragrant. This is my best performing English rose. It's the one that gives me the least trouble. It's fairly healthy compared to some of my others, and has a really pretty light pale pink color. And moving up to my walkway border, there's a few things I want to show you, but first I want to stop here and take a look at this grass. Now, this is an ornamental grass called the Carly Rose, and I really love how the plumes have a bit of a pink hint to them. I planted this here this is its third season, and last year it looked really great, but now you can see that it's getting a little bit shaded from this Hinoki evergreen that's behind it. And what happens with ornamental grasses, if they don't get enough sun, is that they tend to flop. So this will have to get moved, and I'm going to use that as an opportunity to divide it and put it somewhere else in the garden so that it will get more sun and be more upright. But the Carly Rose is a really pretty ornamental grass if you have a full sun spot. It gets to be about 3 to 4 feet tall and wide. And up my walkway, I typically have my gomphrena, the atomic purple gomphrena, and I do have it planted there. It's actually going a little bit slow this year because our summer has been a little funny with weather. We'll get a couple of really hot heat waves and then we'll get cool weather. So today is in the 70s, and gomphrena really wants hot, dry weather to get going. So I feel like it's going to be a little bit later than years past, but in the meantime, I am trying another annual in my front border this year, right behind the gomphrena, and it is the Suncredible sunflowers, and they are gorgeous. Now, these started as small 4-inch pots, and just look how large it has gotten. It has really filled out a great amount in just a short time. So I am really impressed with these. They're so nice and upright. They have tons of blooms and buds on them. So I can only imagine how many more flowers this plant is going to have in the coming weeks. The bees love it, and it has been really low maintenance so far. All I've done is deadheaded it a couple of times, and I generally leave it alone. And right here I have a conifer that is called a boulevard cypress. It's also flushed out with a bunch of new growth and looking really pretty. But right in front of it I have a candy corn spirea, and I really love this spirea for all of the color it provides. You can see it is now done blooming, but it is pushing out some new foliage, and the new foliage is red and really pretty. I will say that this shrub needs a part shade location because it does really well here, but I have one in another border that gets a little too much sun and it's starting to crisp up a bit. So I had waited a couple of seasons to see if it would acclimate, but it looks like I'm going to have to move it to a part shade location, part shade, part sun. But something that surprised me this year was this phlox. It actually self-seeded itself in this space. Several years ago, I used to have a shorter variety of a coral phlox here, and somehow this pink phlox showed up in its place, and it's a tall garden phlox, and I really love the way that it's looking with the yellow Suncredible sunflowers and the white Shasta daisies. And what's great about it is that it showed up right when my roses, my knockout roses, have a lull. So they bloomed really well in June, end of May into June, and now they're kind of recharging. I did deadhead them, clean them all up. You can see they're starting to bud up again, but it's actually the same exact pink as this phlox. So just when I was missing the double pink knockout rose color, this phlox showed up and gave me some of that pink. So now I am going to consider either finding some more tall garden phlox in this color to add down the border, or dividing this to kind of sprinkle it along because I really love that color. Some more sunflowers, and you can see right below I do have some gomphrena that's a bit larger in size. It's getting a little more sun in this area, and so it will really fill out fast now that it's already starting to put on some size. And I can't wait to see my drift of gomphrena in front of the sunflowers. I think will be a really pretty combination. I will insert some footage of what this gomphrena has looked like in years past. This is my 4th year growing it, and if you've been around the channel for a while, you already know my love for the gomphrena. But if you're newer and wondering why I'm so excited about this underwhelming small plant at the moment, just wait and see. That footage will show you how large it gets by the end of the season. It cascades over my walkway and just looks stunning. And I think that purple gomphrena color backed by this yellow sunflower is going to be really beautiful, and I can't wait to see it all fill out together. And some of the poppies that I started by sowing them in the snow, you can see that they have already bloomed and they're now faded, and I just have some beautiful poppy pods here. They're really large. As these dry out, you can crack them open, sprinkle all of those seeds, and you'll get more poppies next year. But I really like this blue color and these pods, so I left them up for some visual interest. But right in this corner, I have a hydrangea that I planted a couple of seasons back, so not last season, the one before, and this is the Proven Winners Tiny Quickfire, and it is a compact version of the Quickfire. It is gorgeous. Now it is pretty early blooming, so probably about the time that I did my June garden tour, it started to bloom and had these creamy white blooms, and you can see that now it is starting to get a hint of pink to them. But they're pretty compact. They're supposed to be only about 2 by 2 in size, and I really love the way it looks in this corner of the bed. Right behind it, I have a hydrangea. This is the a hibiscus. This is the Luna hibiscus. It is a white bloom. This typically blooms for me in August, so it's starting to get all of its buds. And it's going to be a really gorgeous dinner plate size white bloom with a red center, really pretty. And some Rudbeckia that self-seeded itself, but I think it looks really pretty in this corner with the dark foliage of my Wine and Roses Weigela, so I'm just going to leave it there. And it also looks really pretty with the white blooms of the Luna hibiscus. So if they stick around long enough, we'll see these two in bloom together for the August garden tour. And my front porch pots are looking absolutely beautiful for the summer. These annuals have really filled out. You can see here, this one is gorgeous, and I definitely want to repeat this one. This is the Proven Winners Superbena Violet Ice, and it is gorgeous. I love this vibrant purple color. It looks really pretty with this compact glow Sun Patient. Right behind it, I actually have some blueberry swirl phlox that I started from seed, also looking really pretty. And my friend Maureen had grown this, and what I loved about it was how it has so many different colors on the same phlox. You can see how it ages to this really light pale color, and I think it looks really pretty. And Angelonia, which again is a new to me annual this year, gorgeous. We'll grow it every year going forward. I really love it. This one is called the Blue. Angel Face Blue, and it has just gone non-stop all season long and always has more blooms on it. But just look at the size of these planters right here. So beautiful. I actually have had to cut back the sweet potato vine on that planter because it had gotten so aggressive and large that it was taking over the petunias. So now it is starting to flush out again. And next I have to go through and cut back my petunias. It's about that time at mid-season where you need to do a little bit of container maintenance. You can see I have a coleus. This is the torchlight coleus in the center. And this petunia is called I believe it's called Paradise Supertunia. It is gorgeous. Yes, it is. It's Supertunia Vista Paradise. And it really is so eye-catching and vibrant. So from the street, you really notice these planters and they make a statement. And I'm really happy with the way they turned out this year. The color of the petunia picks up on the veining on this torchlight coleus. And then the dark fountain grass will transition this planter beautifully into fall. And then the sweet potato vine in the front adds a nice color of green contrast, which matches the veining or on the outer edge of the coleus, the borders. So I really love the way this container combo turned out. Another beauty is the double vintage coral Super Bell. You can see how large this has gotten as well. There are 2 plants, 4-inch pots in each of these planters, and they are ginormous. So I do think that I could have gotten away with just one 4-inch pot in each of these 12-inch planters. And coming over to this last front border, I have a drift of some of the Sahara Rudbeckia. Now this is the second year I've grown it. It's a little bit past its prime now and needs to be deadheaded, but this has been blooming for a few weeks now and it is gorgeous. Now this was listed as an annual for our zone because we're in a 6B7A, but I had a couple of plants come back. This one here is a second year plant. You can see how large it is and it's a little bit taller than the others, but I liked it so much and I wanted to make sure that I had more, that I started even more plants this year. In fact, I have so many in this corner that you can barely see that I have another tiny quickfire tucked right here that is also blooming. And my Rudbeckia is also in full bloom here in the front. I still have lots of buds to open up. This plant tends to go for a little while. This perennial will start blooming for me in July and it'll head into the beginning of August. So I usually get about 4 weeks of blooms out of my Rudbeckia. This is the Goldstrom variety. And I think it contrasts so nicely with the Blue Fortune Agastache. Now, if you recall a few videos back, I had talked about how I went and replaced these. I actually showed it in a video when I went to the nursery to grab some more because the Blue Fortune Agastache that I planted here a couple of seasons ago didn't return after winter this year. So I purchased 2 pots and I stuck them here to fill out the space because mine had gotten pretty large. So if I just planted one, it wouldn't be big enough. In fact, I think I could have even planted 3. But it is really beautiful. Some phlox. Now this garden phlox was given to me by my sister-in-law. I really love the color. I'm not entirely sure what the variety is because it was a pass-along plant, but I'm suspect that it's the Gina variety. But let me know in the comments if you recognize it because I really like it. And recently I planted some Firefly Peach Sky Yarrow and it is starting to put on some more bloom buds and looking really pretty. In fact, it contrasts really nicely with the balloon flower that's right behind it. And this was one that also self-seeded itself here and has been growing and looking really pretty this season. But I really like the contrast of foliage on yarrow because it has that ferny texture. I actually added another one right here. And that's all budded up as well. I have some asters that I thought would bloom a little bit later, but they did bloom earlier than I expected, and so I have to go through and deadhead them. This is called the Mange, I believe, aster. Here's that other candy corn spirea that I mentioned. Gets a little bit too much sun. You can see that in some areas it has crisped up and it generally isn't as full as the other one. So I'm going to consider moving this somewhere in the backyard this fall and find something else to put in the front of the border. But I have this yarrow here that you can see has bloomed a ton. It's getting a little more sun in this area and looking really gorgeous. Now the great thing about yarrow blooms as well is that the blooms go through a color change. So they'll start off a really bright peach color here, then they'll fade to more of a terracotta color before getting a little bit more of a yellow coloring to them or a creamy color. So really pretty. You'll get multiple colors on just one plant as the blooms fade. I also planted some summer drumsticks allium and they're starting to fade now, but they were looking really pretty and upright just a couple of weeks ago. And these are bulbs that you plant in the fall and they kind of just come up atop the plants and they're really wiry and pretty. Now some of them I did plant a little bit too close to the front of the border, so this fall I will consider moving them a bit back more. Because of their height, they need to be between other perennials that will hold them up. I also planted another drift of the Sahara Rudbeckia right here in this corner in front of the traditional Goldstrom Rudbeckia. And it's also backed by some more of the Blue Fortune Agastache, which looks so beautiful paired with Rudbeckia. If you don't have the Blue Fortune Agastache, I would highly recommend it to pair alongside the Rudbeckia because they contrast so nicely together, both in texture, in different shape of the bloom, and in color because blue and yellow are opposite on the color wheel. And in the back of the bed, I have my taller plants, and you can see here that my lilies are blooming. Now these are stargazer lilies, and they're looking gorgeous, and they're also very fragrant. Lilies have a really nice smell, and with the breeze, they kind of waft in the air, and it smells really nice. I have a drift of some coneflowers. These are the Echinacea purpurea, or the native coneflower. I have some here, and I repeated this pattern with the coneflowers on the opposite side of my blue atlas cedar. Now this conifer I often get questions about. It is the serpentine shape blue atlas cedar. So it's shaped into an S, how it was trained, and it is really beautiful. And so I repeated this pattern on both sides where I have the coneflowers as well as this plant that I started from seed. It is called the blue, let me try to remember the name of it. Blue globe thistle, that's what it is. And it has a really pretty blue color to it. It is really spiky. And it is also a globe or round shaped bloom. I started a bunch more this year from seeds that I collected from my own plants, and I can't wait to add it in more areas of the garden. You can see that I have some more phlox back here and some more of the beautiful Echinacea purpurea. I really love this blue globe thistle. You can see that this bunch is a bit bigger, or this plant, because there are actually a couple of plants here. And every year it gets a little bit wider and a little bit more blooms on it. It is really easy to start from seed. In fact, the winter sowing method is ideal for this because it is a perennial, and it's a really hands-off approach, a way to grow seeds outside in the winter in a recycled container. I have a whole playlist I can link below if you're interested, but this is a plant that does really well using the winter sowing method. And across from our hillside garden is our Japanese maple garden, and I really love this space. It is very low maintenance. It is just some trees and some conifers and a few shade plantings, but in general I don't have to do much deadheading or any kind of work in here, just a little bit of weeding. Now our Japanese maple collection really shines in the spring. We get really vibrant spring color, and in the summer it kind of goes into a lull where the trees sort of fade to the background, and then in the fall we'll get a little bit of fall color. But I really love this space because it feels so peaceful and zen, and I love that it has a little bit of shade. This is probably the only area in our garden that we get some shade, which is lovely and a great reprieve in the summer from all of the heat that I get when I'm working in my sunbeds. But you can see here, this conifer has gotten so large, and it is beautiful in terms of width. But in general, it's a pretty compact conifer. This is the Duchess golden hemlock, and it's going to get about 4 feet in height and about 4 to 5 feet in width. And you can see it pretty much looks full size at this point. But conifers, usually the size that you see on the tag, that is for a 10-year garden size. When they're happy, they will continue to grow over time, but this one has a slower growth rate. But it's a really pretty one. You can see it's putting on some new growth at the tips. We recently trimmed back these arborvitaes here. These are the Fire Chief arborvitae, and we want them to keep this nice round shape. And in general, they do grow in a round shape, but they'll get some stems that look a little hairy, so we have to go through and give them a little bit of a trim. But these are great because in the winter they get a bronze coloring, and in the spring and summer they have more of this chartreuse color with some coral on the tips for the new growth. Really pretty. All of my lungwort or pulmonaria has filled in this space. Now this bed does need an edit this fall. I'm going to go through and rework it because this pulmonaria has gotten so large that you actually can't see that there is some heucheras planted underneath. So I will be redoing this space, and that is how it often goes in gardening. You are never done with a garden. There's always things that need dividing and planting and moving and so forth. So that's what's going to happen here in fall. The Coneflowers that I have planted in these corten steel planters is looking really good, as is this bamboo that I planted in this long corten steel planter. Now this is called Bamboo Fregesia rufa, and it is a clumping type bamboo. And initially I did think that it would be a bit taller, but it turns out that the clumping variety has more of a shrubby effect. And it overwintered really well here in my zone 6B, 7A. I did not have to cover it or protect it, and it came back just fine this spring. And my hedge of little lime hydrangeas is also looking beautiful. Recently, George went through and limbed up this Katsura Japanese maple a little bit so that this one here could get a little more light, because this little lime was getting kind of covered by this because this shrub that I have here under the Katsura was getting shaded and wasn't getting enough light. So as soon as he limbed it up a bit, it started to bud up, and now it is starting to bloom. Now the first stage of the little lime hydrangea is to have this really pretty green coloring. And then it will fade to a creamy white, and then it'll start going pink as we get later into the summer and the nights get a little bit cooler. I know there are some areas in the south that don't get that color change to pink, and I'm sorry, because it is really beautiful. And then as they continue to age through October, they get all shades of mauve, and this is a shrub in the garden that I just can't say enough good things about. It really is so low maintenance. Other than me pruning it back in late winter, early spring, and giving an application of fertilizer, I have to do nothing to this, and it looks absolutely stunning from May all the way through October here in my zone. So I really love this hedge of little lime hydrangeas. And the annual combination that I picked for my planters this year is also looking really pretty. So I tried something new, and I tried some Gara in the center as my height in the middle of this window box. I have some lobelia and some sunpatiens. This is the orchid sunpatien. These are all proven winners plants, and this beautiful plant is the licorice plant, or helichrysum, and I love this trailing plant. I like it more than the Dichondra Silver Falls because I feel like it fills out more and it has a wider growth habit, where the Dichondra Silver Falls just go straight down. So I've fallen in love with this trailing annual. This is the second year that I'm growing it. I can't say enough good things about it. I repeated the Gara in the center of this tall planter, and I mixed in some Truffula Pink Gomphrena. Now you already know that I love Gomphrena if you've been around for a little while, and this one is also really pretty. And in the center, I have some of the white sunpatiens. Now, I will say that the Japanese beetles really went after my sunpatiens this year, and I'm also having a trouble with earwigs in my annuals containers. So I did go through and sprinkle some Sluggo Plus, and hopefully that will take care of the earwigs. And the Japanese beetles are a temporary issue. They generally go away after a couple of weeks, and so I'm not too worried about it. But you can see how much the Gomphrena in the back of this container has filled out. I also had a couple of extra of the blueberry swirl phlox that I grew from seed, so I tucked those in as well. And in the front, as a trailer, I have Mizzou, which I grew for the first time last year. Really liked it and decided to grow it again this year. It's a succulent type plant. It gets a tiny little pink bloom, super low maintenance, and really drought tolerant. In fact, most of the plants in this container, the Gomphrena, the Gara, the Mizzou in the front, as well as the sunpatiens, can take a little bit less water. So I find that unless it is super hot out, I can generally go a day between waterings, which is really great. And I repeated the same thing on this window box here. My hibiscus, this is the Proven Winners Summerific Perfect Storm hibiscus. It will bloom in August in my garden. It has started to bud up and it gets pretty large sized. This is probably about 5 to 6 feet in diameter and about 4 feet in height at this point. It's a really beautiful hibiscus. Last year, I really love this dark foliage. And last year, this foliage got destroyed by the sawfly larvae, these little green caterpillars on the underside of the leaves that will pretty much eat through the leaf and it'll look skeletonized. But thankfully, so far this year, it's looking pretty good. I do have to spray it from the deer because they like the bloom buds just as much as I do, and they will go and eat them. So if you do have a hardy hibiscus in your garden and you deal with deer, I would recommend spraying the buds to make sure that you get to enjoy the blooms. I also added a couple of annuals in this bed this year. I have some petunias, and this is a jazz variety, but it is a newer variety. Here I have some Sheffield pink mums that will bloom in the fall, okay, which is a great plant to have late season color. It blooms for me in October here in my zone. And I also planted a Coneflowers underneath the shade of this beautiful magnolia tree. And you can see that my astilbe is now faded and done blooming, but all of my anemones are starting to bud up. And this is either September Charm or Rubitissima. I have both of them and they look very similar, so I can never tell the difference between the two. And my beautiful quickfire hydrangea. Now, a couple of years ago when I planted this, I had mentioned to George that it was going to get about 6 to 8 feet tall and wide, and he gave me the look like that's going to be too big. And it has gotten pretty big, but isn't it glorious? This is gorgeous. The pollinators absolutely love it. There are constantly bees and wasps all over this shrub. So if you're allergic, you probably want to be careful, but if you want to bring pollinators to your garden, this is a great hydrangea to do that. It also gets this creamy white color, and as the season goes on, it will age to a beautiful shade of pink, and it persists all the way through the fall and looks lovely. All of the plants have really grown in and filled out, and I can see it from my window when I'm doing the dishes, and it just makes me so happy. These planters here have exploded with growth, and if you've been around my channel for a while, you already know that I love Gomphrena. And this year I used the Truffula Pink Gomphrena by Proven Winners, which is an annual in these back planters, and they have been a rock star annual. They are huge and pretty drought tolerant. They handle the heat and the sun like a champ. And I also did something new with my window boxes this year, where as the centerpiece I used some of this Gara, and I love the way it looks, nice and wispy, and it just kind of floats over the window box, and I just love it. And of course I have the licorice plant trailing in the front that has gotten huge. All you need is one of these plants and it fills out so much throughout the season. And some sun patience. This is the orchid sun patient. It's a compact variety. It gets nice and bushy and round, and I'm really happy with these planter combinations this year. But something that is really shining in the garden at the moment is some of my panicle hydrangeas that are starting to get their rosy pink color as we start to get cooler nights and head into the tail end of summer. Right here by the shed, I have a quickfire hydrangea that has been planted here for about 4 years. And this is a great hydrangea. It is so upright and sturdy. It has these red stems and these really large panicle blooms that are sort of open and airy. And you can see that it has taken on this rosy pink coloring, and it's just looking really beautiful at the moment. It has also gotten quite large, so this is one that needs some space and definitely makes an impact in the garden. I would say that this area here is a part sun location, and it seems to be really happy here. And right here in front of my quickfire hydrangea and beneath my Dr. Merrill magnolia, I have a drift of anemones. And these are the Rubitissima, and they are looking beautiful. They have gotten quite large this year. This is probably their 3rd season in this area. And they do spread by runners, so they can get carried away if they're happy, but they're very easy to pull out and share with friends if you want to. And I just love them. I love how the stems just kind of come above the foliage and just move in the wind. I just think they're beautiful. And moving along on the other corner of this bed, well, I'll stop here real quick and just show you. This is a new annual by Proven Winners that I trialed this year, and I really liked the color because I feel like they echoed the window box sun patience of the orchid that I had in there. So I planted them here, and they are called the Supertunia Vista Cool Jazz. And I planted 3 annuals, and they've really filled out in this space. This is also the first year that I tried petunias in the landscape, and they do really well as a bedding plant. But right here is the star of the August garden for me, and it is my hardy hibiscus. This is the Proven Winners Perfect Storm hardy hibiscus, and it has this beautiful two-toned like pink coloring. It has like a light pink and a darker pink swirl with this deep red throat. Now these to me have a very tropical vibe. I think they would look gorgeous planted by a patio or by a swimming pool, and I just love it here. When we come down our driveway, or if we're in our living room or kitchen, this really grabs your attention. It is beautiful, and it has gotten quite large, you can see. Now this year it seems to be a little bit shorter than it was last year, but in general this shrub here, well, it's a perennial that's as big as a shrub, is about 4 to 5 feet tall and wide. And it's really gorgeous. They are a little bit late to break dormancy. Here in my garden, they don't emerge from the soil until about mid to late May, and they also typically bloom a little bit later for me in the mid to end of August. Tons of buds. They just started to bloom. This bloomed for me, just started like what, a week ago? Not even. But look at all of these buds. It actually blooms right around the time of my cameraman and my lovely husband George's birthday. He actually just had a birthday yesterday, so if you want to wish George a happy birthday in the comments, we can share that with him. And let's head over and check out my limelight hedge. Now I have to carefully walk around my beautiful planters. I love these so much. I feel like a fairy walking among my flowers. But here is my little lime hedge. And this hedge is also one of my favorites, and it really shines this month as well because it starts taking on this pink coloring. I just love how full the panicle blooms are. I love how upright it is. We have not had a ton of rain this year, so thankfully they're not really flopping. But in general, because it has matured some more, the stems are a lot stronger on them this year. So I am really enjoying this hedge. There are 3 planted here. Now this one here on the end was getting a little bit shaded by our Katsura Japanese maple. And if you are a regular of the channel, you might know that my husband George and I have a collection of maples, and he really loves his trees. So I had mentioned to George that this tree needed to be limbed up so that we would have more room to make light for this hydrangea. And his idea was that I should move my hydrangea, which I did not do, but thankfully he came around, and one day, without me even asking, he was out here limbing up this tree, which I was so thankful for, because then it was able to get some more light, and it has bloomed beautifully as well. And right here behind our hedge of little lime hydrangeas, we have a small patio that we actually did a makeover on last summer, and we created this cozy little space. And as the hydrangea hedge grows, it creates a living wall, which gives us a little more privacy in this area. We set up these corten steel planters, we put a bench back here, and I'm happy to report that we've actually been sitting on this bench a little bit more this year, which has been really nice. I have this little bistro set here, which I also have a terracotta pot growing a new annual for next year by Proven Winners. And I might be showing you a couple of new annuals because they sent me a handful of annuals that are new for 2026 to share with all of you. And this is one of them. It is the Whirlwind White Scaevola. And if I said that wrong, please let me know in the comments how to pronounce it. But it has been really happy in this terracotta pot. This is a part shade area, and it has grown really well this season. And I really like the way the simplicity of the white bloom with the terracotta pot looks here. And as we head down into our Japanese maple garden, there are a couple of things I'd like to share with you here. So specifically in this bed, I had thought about editing some plants earlier in the season. I had mentioned that the lungwort or pulmonaria that I have planted here had gotten quite large, and I was thinking that this fall I would be moving some things around. But I quite like the way that it has filled out and sort of created a ground cover. I am still planning on moving out these 2 carex in the front here, and I have a new place in the garden picked out for them. And this is a Cherryman Hinoki cypress, which grows really slowly and looks really lovely here. It's been happy so far. But my plan is to do something with that back corner there, add some color through foliage. And I did have some heucheras planted there, but I have this issue with heucheras in my garden that when I plant them, they look beautiful and full and lush. And then every season after, they get smaller and smaller until they virtually disappear. So I'm wondering if you have any suggestions for me on what you have found to be the best way to grow heuchera so that that doesn't happen. And recently I took off the baskets that were on my ferns because the bunnies had been chewing on them, but my Japanese painted ferns are looking really beautiful right now as well. They've put on quite a bit of growth. And as we head down the path of this Japanese maple garden, I want to share with you a new project that we just started working on. And here you can see is the beginnings of a new planting bed. And the catalyst for this bed was a visible well pipe, which is something that a lot of homeowners have if you have a well, and has been an eyesore in my backyard and garden for a little while. And I was hoping to find a way to disguise it. And I think we've come up with a really clever idea that we're going to be sharing in an upcoming video. But recently we were able to find some more of this stone that we use for edging in all of our beds. And we often get questions about it, and it's actually cobblestone, also known as Belgium block. And we really like the patina on this aged stone, so we usually scour Facebook Marketplace in search of some, and we recently found some, so that is what we're using to edge this bed. So we have been filming some footage for this project as we work on it. You can see there's a little bit of black spray paint because we already used a hose to kind of outline it. Now we're using the stone, and so more on this project coming soon. And right here by my patio, this is what I call my patio bed for obvious reasons, right? And I absolutely love this bed. You can see right now that my alliums are blooming. This is the Millennium variety, and it's looking beautiful. The pollinators absolutely love this flower. There are bees all over it all day long. You can see right now, there are a ton of them. I actually got stung this week, not on this plant, but I was deadheading some things and I was wearing gloves, thankfully, but I still got stung and it still hurt a little bit. Maybe not as much as if I wasn't wearing gloves. And my hedge of the firelight tidbits are looking beautiful, also picking up some of that pink color now as we're getting later into the season. Now these are looking gorgeous. I planted these here in 2023, so this is their third season, so 2 years, third season, and they're looking absolutely gorgeous. They've put on quite a bit of size and have really filled in that short amount of time. These are a panicle hydrangea. I had initially replaced a smooth or arborescens type hydrangea that I had here called the wee white, because shortly after it bloomed, the wee white would look like heads of roasted cauliflower. It just could not handle the sun in this area and would go brown. So I passed them along to a friend, and these were the replacements, the firelight tidbits, and they have done wonderfully. And you can see that I planted some annuals in this bed this year to kind of fill in the gaps between perennial blooms. And this is the Illumination Dahlia in this light yellow color. And what I love about it is the dark foliage. I think it provides a really nice contrast in this bed. And I have to be honest, using annuals mixed in with my perennials in my borders is going to be something I do every year going forward, because I have absolutely loved it. It really provides a lot of color. So right here, I have another group of those dahlias, the Illumination dahlias. And in front of it, I had some Wedgwood pink Angelonia. But it is taking a break right now because I did deadhead it. And this in front, I have yet another row, and this is the whiteout verbena. And it is a trailing verbena, and it is also in a little bit of a lull at the moment. So those had bloomed profusely throughout most of the summer. I did fertilize them recently, so they should start picking up some more blooms to finish out the season strong. And one of the very best annual salvias is right here. This is Rockin' Playin' the Blues salvia, and it is gorgeous. So I have plans on adding more of this to my beds next year. I love salvia in general, and because perennial salvias typically just bloom for a short period of time in the spring, I think having an annual salvia mixed in is a great option. And I have some delphiniums that are going on their second flush of blooms. So here are some delphiniums that I grew from seed, and look how beautiful this is. This is the white bee mix, and it is the sky blue, and it is gorgeous. And of course, I have this drift of an annual, which is the Signorita Rosalita Cleome. The coneflowers have started to dry up now and are losing some of their color, but the cones are still really beautiful and providing some structure in the garden. So I'm gonna let those go for a bit longer. I eventually will deadhead quite a bit of them, but I still leave some up for the birds to snack on the seeds. The goldfinches specifically really love them. I catch goldfinches over here all the time. They like to perch on the new fountain, and while they're here, I'm pretty sure that they're pecking at the heads on these coneflowers as well, which is a lot of fun. And you can see this really tall plant here. This is the Joe Pye weed. It's also a pollinator magnet. The bees go back and forth between the Joe Pye weed and the allium. And this is also a really pretty plant with these red stems. It's great for the middle of the border like this if you have a two-sided bed, or even the very back of a border because it is quite tall, but really great for late season color. There are a couple more things I wanted to show you in the front border of this bed that I kind of breezed by and just realized. One of them is that I also added some of this campfire marshmallow bidens, which is a new to me annual this year. And I have a group here, one there and one there. And I really love the way that it looks like a dainty little Cosmo. This is the name of it. They're really filling out now and providing a little pop of white in the front of the bed. And I had started some of this Dusty Miller New Look from seed. And when I had some extras after I filled out my pots, I wasn't sure what to do with it. So they stood in their containers a bit longer than they should have, which is why they're still a little small, but they're putting on some size now. And I actually really love this drift of this silvery foliage in the front of this bed. So I have made a note to make sure that I grow some Dusty Miller for the landscape next year as well. So even if you want to add some annuals to your beds, some like Dusty Miller, you can start from seed really easily, and they really offer a really nice pop of color. And right here we have our driveway bed, which we did in a video a couple of seasons back now in the fall, and things are really filling in. Now this also needs some editing. I actually have 3 blank spots back here that we had to pull some things out of because they ended up dying. This bed is very moist. It holds a lot of moisture because this is where all the water kind of runs down our property. And so I need some evergreens that can withstand some moisture, and I will have to plant them really high. I had a sky pencil holly on either end that ended up dying. I had a golden hemlock in the center here that also didn't make it. And so now here we are. But look at this shrub right here in the center and how large they have gotten. There are 2 planted here, and these are the, let me see if I can remember the name. It's a mouthful. This is the Iceberg Alley Sage Leaf Willow. And they are beautiful. They really do look like sage if you look at the leaves. They have this steely blue coloring. And in the spring, when they first start to break dormancy, they have these catkins on them that look very much like pussy willow, and I really love them. And willows do really well in moist soil, hence the reason these have done very well in this area. And in the front, you can see that I have a couple more plants planted. I added 2 more of the firelight tidbits because I wanted to do that rhythm and repetition in my landscape where when you come down the driveway, you see 2 of these hydrangeas, and then as you get down there at the end of the driveway, you see the patio bed, which has a whole drift of these firelight tidbits. So I'm trying to keep the rhythm continual as you move through the garden with these pops of the panicle hydrangeas. And in the center this spring, I added another conifer that is a Cryptomeria globosa nana. I really like the way it grows in a rounded shape, and it should get about 3 by 3 over time. And you can see that on either end, I have a grouping of one of my very favorite ornamental grasses. This is the Carl Forester, Calamagratis Carl Forester reed grass. I love it. I think it is the perfect landscape ornamental grass. It is very compact at about 4 feet in height and only about 2.5 feet in diameter. I started with 3 plants. I was able to divide them, and now I have a group of 3 here and a group of 3 there. And as the end of the summer comes, it gets these plumes, which are the blooms on ornamental grasses that look like wheat, and I really like the way they look. And coming up the driveway, this is a project that we did in the beginning of the season. If you've been around since then, it was called Color with Conifers, where we added some Isley conifers behind these entrance walls to add some color all year round. Living here in the Northeast, our perennials will go dormant in the winter, so it's really important to me to add structure in the garden with evergreens that will look beautiful all year. And if you want more information about the plants that I used in this project, I will go ahead and link that video below. But let's take a look at the zinnias that I grow in front of the walls. Now, I started growing this variety of zinnia up here last season, and I love them so much that they have become my staple perennial for these low walls. because they are a compact, more dwarf version of a zinnia. These are the Zahara Double Raspberry Ripple Zinnia. They are gorgeous. They have this sort of striping effect. So when they first emerge, they're a bright pink. And then as they age, they sort of take on a striped pink and white look before fading to almost white. And they just go non-stop all season long. They are drought tolerant. I have only watered these maybe twice when I first planted them, and I've fertilized and deadheaded them one time this whole season, just this week. So they have been on their own since. The deer and rabbit leave them alone. So as far as I'm concerned, they are a winner for a low maintenance annual. I repeated these zinnias on both sides, so I have a drift on either side, and you can see they look really pretty. And I also planted some conifers on this side. Now they're not the same. I did plant a different grouping on either side. There is only one that repeated, and that is that low growing ground cover type conifer. But again, I will link the video below for you to check out if you're interested in compact dwarf variety Islay conifers. And here in the front yard, we have a couple of borders along the front that I'd like to show you. You can see that our grass looks pretty dry at this point in the season. It was gorgeous in the spring, but we've had some issues with our irrigation, and so we haven't been able to use it. And the grass has gotten pretty dry because we've also had no rain, which hasn't been ideal. But in this border, things are starting to look a little tired over here. We do have some more of these alliums that are starting to bloom. Now this is the lavender bubbles, and it blooms shortly after the millennium. So if you really like these alliums, find different varieties that bloom at different times so that you can extend the amount of time that you have them blooming in your garden. I also have some annuals that I started from seed here, and these are the Blue Horizon Ageratum. This is about the third season that I've been growing them, third or fourth. I really love them. They have a really vibrant light purple color, and they're looking gorgeous. This season, I also added some verbena in the front layer of this bed, and it is the pink cashmere, and it's also looking really pretty. I like the way that the blue ageratum looks with the light pink of the verbena. And I also have some anemones that are going to start blooming soon. These are the Honorine Jobert, and you can see that they are budded. And in the next couple of weeks, they will start to crack open as we head into September. So if you are looking for some late season blooms, again, anemones. I have the ones under the tree there that we showed you earlier that are blooming, the Robotissima. And then next I have the Honorine Jobert. And then I have yet one more variety in my patio bed that will bloom after that. And I have another drift of the Lavender Bubbles Allium right here. Now these should be in full bloom in another week. You can see that they're almost all opened. And coming up my main walkway bed, I have a Carly Rose ornamental grass, a hinoki, and a gold mop cypress that we've limbed up into a small topiary tree. But what I really want to talk about is how my gomphrena is so small this year. I grow gomphrena from seed every year. This is the atomic purple gomphrena, and I think what happened was that I planted these Proven Winners Suncredible sunflowers. And while they look absolutely beautiful, they are a very vigorous grower. And so when I planted these, they shaded my gomphrena a little bit, and so they didn't get as much sun as they needed to really start growing. And I have fertilized them recently, and I think that they will pick up before the end of the season, but this might just be a small year for my gomphrena because the sunflowers are taking over the show. And I really do love the way these sunny sunflowers look. I think they're really cheerful, and you can see how full of flowers they are. The bees also really love them. So I think they look really pretty, and it's okay if the gomphrena didn't do as well this year. I'm still hopeful though that they will pick up a little bit more before it's all over at the end of October. This phlox has also been blooming for a really long time. It just popped up here in this bed this year. I don't know where it came from. I used to have a similar looking phlox that was a bit more orange in this bed, and I moved it because it didn't match my knockout roses. And I have it now in my pollinator bed in the backyard, and all of a sudden this pink one that pretty much matches my roses identically popped up here. So I don't know if the birds left me this present doesn't, but I really love it. And I'm actually going to divide it this fall and leave a clump here and add one a little bit down in the bed. Because when my roses take a little bit of a lull after their first initial flush in June, the phlox bloomed all of July and right now in August. So really long time it's been blooming and I love it. My hibiscus, this is the Luna White hibiscus, has pretty much just finished blooming. This side still has a couple of blooms on it. The other side, I have another one. It's all done. Now this one blooms before my summerific hardy hibiscus. So this one starts blooming at the end of July, beginning of August, and by mid to end of August, my backyard hibiscus will bloom. This is a tiny quickfire. Now, I showed you the quickfire in the backyard and it is huge and beautiful. This is a more compact variety. It should only get about 2.5 to 3 feet tall and wide. So it should really fill out this space in the next couple of years. But look how beautiful this deep rose color is. It's gorgeous. I also have a delphinium here that got a little bit knocked over with the wind today. But this is a new variety of delphinium for next year, Proven Winners 2026 release. And I actually have the tag. Let me show you that. It is the Violets Are Blue delphinium. It likes full sun, part sun, and it gets to be 30 to 36 inches in height. So it is a great perennial to use in, say, the middle of a border or even the second row of a border. So I planted it here in the spring when I received a small 4-inch sample size, and it has done really well. It was actually in bloom when I received it, and it is now giving me a second flush of blooms, which is really great. I actually received about 8 quart-sized perennials that are new releases for 2026 that I can share with you in an upcoming video, but that was one of them and it's doing pretty well so far. About a month ago, I made a video called Cutting Them, where I cut back all of my petunias to give them a rejuvenation prune. Basically, throughout the middle of the season, you want to cut back your petunias by 1/3 or 1/2, whichever you're comfortable with, to get them to bush out and look beautiful again. Because as the season goes on, they tend to get a little bit leggy and straggly. And so to get them nice and bushy and full like this, you give them a haircut. And look how well they have bounced back. They're looking beautiful. And this is something that you can do with any kind of petunia. I also did it on these super bells, and you can see that they're starting to get all budded up again and looking really healthy and pretty. And even the verbena that's in the planter, I did that with. This is the Violet Ice, which, by the way, I absolutely love and plan on using again next year. It has been the most vigorous verbena that I've grown this year. Between the whiteout, the pink cashmere, this one has been my favorite. I have some more Angelonia here that I also cut back, and you can see that it's starting to get a bunch of buds. This is a really great annual as well. It is called Summer Snapdragon or Angelonia, and that is the blue variety. But these did not miss a beat. These containers look absolutely beautiful. I love this combination. I'm even thinking about doing these in my driveway next year because I like to try something different on the front porch each year, but I love the combo so much that I want to use it somewhere. So either in the back patio or the driveway, but I will definitely be repeating this combo. You can see that using purple fountain grass in an annual container is wonderful because as we get into the later part of summer, it has sent up all of its plumes, and that's going to transition beautifully into fall. And as we move into this bed here, you can see that this Luna hibiscus is all done. This side gets a little bit more sun than the other side, so it started to bloom first. So it is done blooming now, but my Rudbeckia still looks gorgeous. It's been blooming since July, so a really long time that perennial blooms. I also have another tiny quickfire on this side to mimic the other side. I usually like to repeat things on both sides of the porch. Also has its rosy color and looking really pretty. And my Sahara Rudbeckia, I went through and I deadheaded it recently, and it's still looking great. Now, I grew this for the first time last year thinking it was an annual, and I actually had some plants that came back this year. We did have a mild winter, so that's probably partly the reason for that, but I did grow some extras from seed again this year because I loved it so much. I wanted to make sure that I had it again. My Blue Fortune Agastache is still blooming, as is my Phlox. The coneflowers up front here are also pretty tired now and starting to fade. But just when those perennials start to get tired, I have a couple of other things looking really pretty, specifically late season bloomers, like some aster. I also have some sedums that are going to be starting to bloom pretty soon. Now I am trying to find some more of that aster. It's called the Fragrant Munch, and it's a great variety. It's been blooming for a long time, since about July, and you can see that there are still tons of buds on it. It has a really pretty light purple color. But the sedum that I have in the front here is called Neon, and my neighbor actually shared it with me. It started off as one plant, and I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 along the front of this border. I have divided it. Sedum is super easy to divide. If you are moving it and a stem falls off or breaks, you just shove it in the soil. It will root and give you a new plant, and it just provides a really long season of interest. Even when it starts to break dormancy in the spring, you get this little mounded cluster of these shiny and large succulent leaves, and it looks really pretty. And then as the summer goes on, it sends up its bloom stalks before it starts to color up in the fall. And some grasses. So these are some low growing ornamental grasses. This variety is actually called Little Bunny. And you can see it has all of its blooms, which are these plumes, and this is what they call a fountain grass, which means it kind of has this fountain appearance, and it's great for the front of the border because it's nice and compact. Now this was one that, again, I bought one plant. I divided it in two, and I have a grouping on either side of my candy corn spirea. And candy corn spirea, what an appropriate name for a plant that will carry us all the way through the fall. You can see the new growth has these red tips, and it has this chartreuse yellow coloring. It blooms in June with clusters of pink blooms, and it is one of my favorite spireas. And I repeated this grouping of Rudbeckia on this side as well, and the Blue Fortune Agastache, or Agastache is what I say, and I really like the way it looks. I think these two plants make a really great combination because they have a different bloom shape. One is a spike, one is a traditional flower shape, and the colors are also opposite on the color wheel, so they're really complementary to one another. Well, I want to thank you so much for hanging out with us on this beautiful evening for the August garden tour. Thank you for spending your time with us, and I'll catch you in the next one.